Okay, when you look at some of the oldest, most famous football stadia in the world, they're located literally in the heart of their communities. In the UK, Anfield, the home of Liverpool Football Club, is still surrounded by residential streets, and before or after games, and it still happens, kids play their own matches and they emulate their heroes in those sort of working class neighbourhoods around the stadium. Football brings people together. The stadium is still the place where it physically happens, and that is irreplaceable. And of course, modern day stadium these days own fully fledged businesses. You can stage a big concert there, a different sport entirely. If you think of, say, for example, the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in North London, they stage NFL games and concerts as well as Spurs home games. And the best examples have hotels, they have restaurants, entertainment, ample parking, and stadia come packed as well with tech and innovation from top to bottom when it comes to the fan journey and the fan experience on match day, all of the gadgets and gizmos to make sure that those supporters get a full, interactive, even immersive experience, and crucially the infrastructure to support it. And also the way that stadia are being built is changing because clubs have to be mindful of being responsible, ensure that they're being sustainable, not wasteful, taking care of their workers, not exploiting them. They're living examples, if you like, stadia, of that triple bottom line: people, planet, profit. These things can happily coexist. And that's the sort of thing that can really make a stadium thrive, a football club thrive, a whole city thrive. Football will always be a driver for tourism, that's for sure, but it's now a much, much more complete offering than that. I just love this topic because I think that, stadiums are often considered just boring buildings. So let's dive deep into the conversation. The session brought to you in partnership with the Nelson Mandela Bay Municipality. So please welcome our speakers. Acting Stadium Manager at Nelson Mandela Bay Municipality, Zakona Prince. The Acting Executive Director of Sport, Recreation, Arts and Culture at the Nelson Mandela Bay Municipality, Charmaine Williams. And Secretary General from CASAFA, Sue Detombe. And your moderator, Executive Producer at Marawa Sports Worldwide, Robert Marawa. Please welcome them to the stage. Welcome along. Zakona, you're in the middle here. Sue, you're on this side. And Charmaine, you're just in the seat behind you. Thank you very much indeed. And by the way, and I think this is an important point to mention, and also just as a man to mention this point, it's great that we have so much female representation on panels here at WFS Africa and generally at WFS events. Recently at WFS Seville, in Europe in Seville, we set a baseline. We said no less, no fewer than 30%, and we exceeded it. And I think that is just the start. Just the start. We want this to become much, much more than that. So this is great to see this, and I'm sure that you all agree.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to all the delegates that have been here. A real honor to spearhead and to moderate, which is a conversation that we all believe is maybe long overdue. And I think Nelson Mandela Bay in all its finery and all its glory that you've seen in that video, really showcasing a city that's thriving for so much more, a city that believes in what it has, not only just from infrastructure, but from the human capital that it does have. And that is why today, when you talk about this modern city as a drive of commercial activity, social development, innovation, sustainability through sports tourism, we'll get a little bit of a head start regarding why Nelson Mandela Bay is so important. So we'll shoot straight into it because time does seem to fly when we're having these discussions. But the most frequently asked question is, what is Nelson Mandela Bay doing here? We'll get the answer to that as the discussion goes ahead. Ms. Charmaine Williams is representing the Nelson Mandela Bay Municipality. Just to kick-start it, Charmaine, I think you've done brilliant work so far, and I think that really showcased in that video. But sport, how have you been able to use sport as a driver, and especially football, as a driver of economic activity within the city?
Thank you, Robert, and good afternoon to everybody, and thank you for the opportunity. Nelson Mandela Bay is the economic hub of the province of the Eastern Cape. So as a city, in terms of one of our strategic objectives in our integrated development plan, the city has taken a deliberate decision to position the city as a preferred destination through sports tourism. So what we do as a city, we actively bid or proactively bid for strategic sporting events. We also invite event owners and federations to partner up with the city in terms of hosting these events and definitely putting in joint bids. So sports tourism has basically formed the foundation for driving economic development in the city over and above our predominantly automotive industry, hospitality industry, and the industry of events, conferencing, etc. So definitely a deliberate attempt to promote tourism through sports events.
We'll come back for a few more questions, just to build up on what you've said. I just want to give everyone a bit of a chance to lay their foundation as well as to get to understand the roles that they play. I've got in the middle Zikona Prince, tourism drivers and integration with sport. And because that great facility that we all see, and I think everyone has an opportunity as they're about to land just to take out their cameras and take photos because it's such a scenic stadium. And the backdrop is beautiful as well. How much work are you putting in, especially from within the stadium itself? What do people not know about the stadium besides the fact that it's got seating and it's got grass? Because I know you've done so much more work than that.
Okay, thank you, Rob. When you mentioned the Nelson Mandela Bay Stadium, when we refer to it, we don't just refer to it as a stadium. We call it a multi-purpose facility. Reason for that is because it's not just about sporting. Yes, we do host sporting events, soccer, rugby, and all other stuff. But then moreover, we do conferencing, banqueting, musical shows, even gospel shows as well. I think in the last 3 years, we've also had a church conference, which will go over 2 to 3 years. That was done inside the bowl, and with that, we can also segment the stadium and into different categories, but then it doesn't end there as well. The stadium is involved in e-games. One thing that few people know about the stadium is the fact that we actually have a sports museum inside the stadium. It showcased the history of the stadium. You must remember that the stadium, when it was built for the World Cup. But then 2010 came and it's gone now. We had to find other things to do within the stadium as well. So it will give you the history starting from 2010 World Cup and also showcasing our sports heroes within the province, especially the Nelson Mandela Bay. So that's basically what we do, and I can sit here and be proud to say the Nelson Mandela Bay Stadium actually did a drone racing. We're the first stadium to actually do a drone race inside the pitch. So that's what basically our stadium is all about. And we continue to sort of upgrade and bring more ideas into the stadium and how to make it best and be competitive, not just in South Africa, Africa and the world. That's basically us.
Wow, drone racing, I think that's one of the first, and I know e-gaming as well has played a major role within the stadium, but also just new innovations that you want to bring in. What does that do for the youngsters, though, who yearn for these new modern games, like you talk about droning and e-gaming and so on? Do you see a larger interest amongst the younger generation?
Yes, Robert does. I think our market is basically the young people. We cannot deny the fact that young people are so involved in things that are not really pretty, if I can put it that way. But then when you sort of introduce these initiatives and the way they accept them and then embrace them, it becomes pride and joy. when we introduced the e-gaming, there was a lot of people that were actually interested in it, especially people around the Bay, youngsters, to be honest with you, and they yearned for these things. And hence now we just said, because remember, when you start a project, you start it small, not knowing where it's going to go, but then seeing and how they're receiving it now, it has actually pushed us to say, let's do it even further. Yes, it's an e-gaming thing, but then we went as a stadium to actually have an e-game center inside the stadium. It's not fully functional. We started it, I think it was 2020 when we actually built it inside the stadium. But because of COVID now, we couldn't actually finish the project. But as I'm sitting here now, it's going, the preparations is going, so we're going to actually have our own e-gaming center, not relying on a service provider to be bringing equipment onto the stadium. Drone racing as well, first ever at the stadium, but then I can safely say the reception was also good when it comes to that. And interest was also coming from young people of Gqeberha. But then when we do such initiative, it's not just to concentrate into Gqeberha or Eastern Cape. We open up the stadium to everyone that's interested. We don't have a problem with partnering with people outside the province as well. I think that's more the reason as to why we're here, to say the stadium is there, but it's not there for the Eastern Cape, but then for everyone at large.
And I like that, because when you talk about it not just being there for people from Gqeberha, the Eastern Cape, it leads me now to Sue de Stone, that we all know so well, because she's been involved in football for many, many years. She's been a major driver when it comes to the growth of football, South Africa, Africa, and really taking it up to the world. And you've kind of made Nelson Mandela Bay Stadium, Gqeberha, a home, especially within COSAFA. There must have been a pull. There must have been that one thing or two things or three things, Sue, that said, you know what, our national teams are happy here. CAF is happy here. SAFA is happy here. What was that?
Thank you, Rob. Yeah, I think it's important to have, and we're very fortunate, you know, to have Nelson Mandela Bay as, and within the Eastern Cape province, you know, as one host, as we have right here in the eThekwini and KwaZulu-Natal government. So it's, we have found in Nelson Mandela a receptive home, good hospitality. Of course, we've got, you know, the iconic stadium, and we do play there sometimes, but Zekona and us bash heads sometimes, because we find, incredibly so, that the stadium is not just waiting for COSAFA and football to come along, you know. Strange though that may seem, and she's just been telling us why. But so we've got that stadium, but we've also got other smaller stadia, but you know, right within the township, the Isaac Wolfson that we perennially play at, where you just get the most fantastic crowd and vibe, and the community has been very receptive and very supportive of the women's teams. This is our home for women, the senior women in particular, and we've played there since 2018. And as you say, you know, with national teams, when they used to the, you know, the lads, they like the, you know, maybe the smallness of the city, short distances, having to go from hotel to training to stadium, etc. Welcoming. I think that's, you know, it's a big thing, is welcoming, you know, well, you know, it's Nelson Mandela Bay, beautiful scenery, etc. Yeah.
Welcoming and also just engaging, because the community is great. There's many and plenty, and I know before we came in for the session, we were just talking about a lot of the big stars, a lot of the administrators, a lot of the football players, both male and female, that are from the region as well. So very rich in terms of that as well. That must mean a lot, because, again, coming back to you, Charmaine, post-COVID, one kind of tends to project and say, how have you been then able to, from a sports, arts and culture perspective, to bounce back? Because it would have been difficult given the shutdown.
Yes, that was difficult, but I need to mention that one of the first events that we actually hosted during that period was the COSAFA Women's Cup, and of course then it had to take place within a bio bubble, and really that tested the city's ability, of course, to deliver services within that context and to make sure that we satisfy our partner for through COSAFA. But in addition to that, that also saw a period where we were able to deliver virtual events. For an example, we did the Nelson Mandela Bay Sports Summit at the stadium, and it was a hybrid event where we had few attendees, but mostly streamed it as well. And so we had to come up with innovative ways to still create the necessary platform for sports events in the city, but also arts and culture events. We've got a partnership with our, which is now called the Nelson Mandela Theatre Complex, but it used to be the Opera House. And through that, we also created a lot of virtual platforms. We had to, at some point, even change our summer season events to be staged virtually. And very few people know that during COVID, the Nelson Mandela Bay Stadium became a COVID-19 isolation site. And through the partnership and the willingness of the stadium management, we were able to transform it actually in a COVID hospital. And that, again, for us was innovative in the sense that nobody expected the stadium to become a COVID hospital, if I can put it like that. And we've seen 100% recovery during that time of every COVID positive patient that were taken up there. So from the city perspective, once again, we have seen big value in ensuring that we attract events. We've hosted a couple of events like the Ironman African Championships. We are still hosting it. We prefer to enter into long-term agreements with event owners simply because we want to ensure sustainability, and most importantly, we want to see benefit in terms of social development. We want to make sure that there's legacy after, if I can put it like this, we've paid sponsorship fees and hosting fees. That becomes very important, and that is why we value events like COSAFA Cup, because there's a lot of social benefit to the local community, whether it is through 20 drivers that have to be sourced through the local football associations, whether it is the team liaison officers. It is just a complete job creation, and it adds a lot of value to the local football structures. So there's benefit at a grassroots level, despite the fact that we are hosting an international competition and the focus is on the professional side of sport.
Yeah, I think that side is an important one, because again, it links to what I'm going to ask Uzikona regarding the city, because I think one of the most frequently asked questions, you might have touched on it though in the opening, is whether or not Nelson Mandela Bay is a collaborative city. How would you respond to that?
It's simple, Rob. The asset, which is the stadium, belongs to the municipality. It is owned by the municipality, but currently run by the municipal entity, our entity, which is the Mandela Bay Development Agency. With that said, whatever that, if you can also refer to what Charmaine has said, there are certain events that the city will do, but then the stadium becomes a venue for those. So there is collaboration, there is us working together in terms of eventing the traffic services from the city police. We also involved, we work hand in hand when it comes to the EPWP program. So tourism as well, because when you look at tourism, stadium is one of the the landmarks. So stadium is also a landmark within the city. And then when you talk tourism, stadium is another point where the tourists that come through the city, they can go to the stadium, have, because we also have something that is called a stadium tour. So that to give people an idea of what's really happening inside the stadium. You know, funny enough, when you tell someone in the streets that I work for the stadium, they look at you with shock because they don't understand. So you get to a point of saying exactly, because now they ask you, what is it that you do at the stadium? Because the expectation is that you're only there when there's a game, and if then there's no game, there's nothing. The stadium's doors and gates are closed. So you get to educate people, hence you open it up for tours so that people may understand exactly what is it that's happening within the stadium.
But what's the response been like? Sorry to cut in there, because I think you touch on a very important point where there is a level of ignorance in terms of what do you do at a stadium? We just know a stadium when there's going to be a football game. But I think, as we would all know here, a stadium as a structure becomes an opportunity economically for you to continue making money outside of the turnstiles, outside of the gates, only on match day. We see international stadiums use that opportunity, like you say, take massive tours, independent tours, get jerseys for different clubs, put there, whoever the home team is, get them printed, get to be on the turf, get to sit in the dugout, take photos, they can post them and enjoy the experience. So you're working a lot towards that, and what's the success rate been like so far?
It has been successful. It has been received well by the community and even people around the province as well. Even our tourists outside South Africa, they've actually shown interest into the stadium. One of the things that we also think I need to mention is the fact that we, on a yearly basis, we do a mountain bike challenge into the stadium. A stadium, for some people that don't know, it has 6 levels. So, and it's built as a circle. So we sort of do treks around the stadium, and we'll actually have a competition which is called the Mountain Bike Challenge. We do trade shows outside the concourse areas of the stadium. So there's a lot that we can actually do within the stadium. And they've actually, with people coming in and then understanding what the business is all about and what it can offer to the community, people have gone to the stadium. We've had, I think it was one of our events that we actually did inside the pitch was Dining Under the Stars, which is a beautiful event, which was inside the ball. We did those. So people are coming in, they're hosting their weddings at the stadium. It's really massive.
Wow. And well, I got to compliment the groundsman, because you would never say.
Oh,
I mean,
yes.
he's kept that pitch one of the best pitches in the country as well. I think very competitively so. So yeah, kudos to him or her or the team that do it. It really is magnificent. And talk about that collaborative partnership, because within COSAFA it's been spanning for many years now. What would you say, Sue, is the main driver in order to keep it as a competitive region?
To keep Nelson Mandela Bay
as a competitive region, because we've always seen when major tournaments go to different regions, it's always the so-called big cities, and then all of a sudden Nelson Mandela Bay started creeping up. But then there's the value. You look at the growth of Banyana, you see their qualification into AFCON, you see their qualification into the World Cup. That breeding ground is exactly Nelson Mandela Bay.
Exactly, but you know, it goes back to what we had said before, is a welcoming, nurturing environment. Number one, the fact that we've had a consistency. We know that there's a consistency for X number of years. The city knows that. Our teams get to know it. Oh, are we going to Nelson Mandela Bay again? Oh, right, lovely. So they know exactly what to expect. This partnership has very much been alongside Coach Des and the players, obviously, but has played an important role in having qualified Banyana in 2019 to the Women's AFCON and to the World Cup in France. And then again, having qualified this time around and going to Australia, it has played an important role because it's given us, the knowledge that we have a host. So that's, it's a big plus factor for us. We know for sponsors, we can say, this is where it is. This tournament is happening here. There's a known quantity, there's a consistency, there's a sustainability. So I think that's an important factor there. I must just go back to what Charmaine had said in 2020 post-COVID. Was not post-COVID. We were in COVID. The minister had announced on the 5th of October that that we were kind of open for business, little bit, so we jumped on board with that, and we didn't only do one tournament in Nelson Mandela Bay. We did 4. 4 over a 6-week period that Nelson Mandela Bay ably rose to the challenge of that. It was the senior women. There were 2 AFCON qualifiers, the boys, and there was an under-17 girls as well. So it was a mammoth task, but we did it, and we did it together. And quite literally kick-started the hospitality and tourism industry again, because hotels had been dead. They were closed. They reopened for business when COSAFA came to town, and it was 6 to 8 weeks longevity. So it was a fabulous, kickstart and a lifeblood for the industry and for the individuals. Those people of the community that Charmaine mentioned, people that we offer a temporary employment to. That on a normal, when we are there for one tournament, we're talking about 100 people, drivers, volunteers, et cetera, and then again, being able to service the community, from a legacy perspective, in terms of the referees courses that we do, the administration and management courses, the D or C license coaching courses. So leaving a legacy, which is good for the city. It's good for the footballing community, of the Eastern Cape. We've diversified and said, okay, we'll do one in PE, but we'll also go to Mthatha. So we've embraced the greater community of the Eastern Cape as well, which serves to make them, give them further benefit in terms of working conditions going forward.
I'm glad you mentioned Mthatha, because, since the demise of the Independence Stadium, that was always seen as, giving hope to youngsters that want to grow and continue with the legacy of the Mthatha Bucks of this world. So I think it's great that you've extended it up until thus far. We saw the video earlier on. I think, Charmaine, you had shown us an overall picture within Nelson Mandela Bay. This time around, based on what Zikona was talking about regarding the stadium, the multifaceted manner in which other sporting codes can be used, and maybe just for general usage in terms of stadium tour, I'm just going to ask that we roll the second video just to highlight that, because it's one thing talking, but it's another thing seeing. So here's the visual aspect of what she was talking about.
What happens when a city gets together? What makes a stadium? In 2006, when we began construction on the Nelson Mandela Bay Stadium, we only dreamed of where the stadium journey would have taken us as a city. We started with an existing community park space and added a world-class stadium design with facilities to host sporting, business and cultural events. The idea was to create a multi-purpose venue to serve the community and allow for large-capacity events that could bring large numbers of our city together. Partnering with local suppliers, we created a stadium of world-class safety and security standards, with a pitch suitable for hosting a World Cup with all the resources to attract international sporting events. And we did. And when all that behind-the-scenes work came together, we were rewarded with what it was all about. Us, the jewel of the Bay, our meeting place, because this is our stadium. A state-of-the-art conference venue, perfect for hosting training and roadshows or expos. A 42,000-seater world-class stadium arena with private and corporate suites. Vast open B fields for large music events. World-class ticketing and security system to run it all seamlessly. And a dedicated stadium management team behind the scenes, making sure our city's asset runs smoothly. But when we say Nelson Mandela Bay Stadium, we don't mean the bricks and mortar. We don't mean the infrastructure or facilities. We don't mean the planning or admin. When we say Nelson Mandela Bay Stadium, we mean you, us, the community of Nelson Mandela Bay that makes a stadium into an arena for greatness. It's a greatness that can't be described. It must be felt. So make sure you are part of the Nelson Mandela Bay Stadium experience soon.
Wow. Hey? I think that must put a big smile on your face.
Yes,
to
definitely.
see that, because at the end of the day, you need to make sure that the people within the city stay in the city and don't aspire to go elsewhere. They find it all in there. That's the main drive, I would imagine.
And there's more.
Yeah.
There's actually more that we can offer. I know, in terms of our future plans, Rob, we sort of want to have a sports arena. As it stands, we're at the beginning, early stage of that, because we're going to have to do that outside the stadium, but within the stadium precinct as well. What we're looking to do here, there is two five-a-side turfs. Also, we also going to build a hockey turf. So we were looking forward into hosting games there. If I mean, the turfs that we're building, we want to go international standards so that we can also host the international fixtures and games in there. So there's a lot that we're still looking to do. There are plans of actually doing a recycling hub inside the stadium. Another thing that we need to be proud of is the fact that we actually have a purification plant inside the stadium. For those that have actually had gone to the stadium, we know the stadium is located next to the lake. So when it comes to the purification, actually purify the water that's coming from the lake. At this point, it's not drinkable yet because we don't really have control over the lake. But then in terms of irrigation, that's the water that we use to actually for irrigation around the stadium. We're going to go further than that to actually make the water more drinkable. So those are the things that we're still looking into. When we say multi-purpose facility, that's what we mean.
Sure. That's incredible, though, because we all know the scarcity of the water resources in the country. So if already you're thinking that far, it really is a major driving factor, not just for fertilization and irrigation and maintaining, but I think those are very bold plans. And I think the city does need to be applauded for that. Charmaine, when you talk about that, and I think it leads on to my point, is that so many municipalities across the country struggling post-2010, there were the facilities that were built, either as training facilities or stadiums for games to be played. They slowly become white elephants. Lack of utilization, lack of innovation, lack of drive. How are you making sure that Nelson Mandela Bay keeps exactly what you've been all talking about here, but even does more?
Yeah, we have an infrastructure plan that covers not only the normal infrastructure with regard to water, irrigation, electricity, etc., but we also have a sport and recreation infrastructure plan to support sport development and sport for development. So what we do in the future, we've already decided, because of the drought challenge that we have currently delivered 2 artificial football pitches in different communities. We are in the process of finishing one as I'm speaking, and the intention is to roll the development of artificial football pitches out into the 6 clusters that we have in the municipality. In addition, we have done a number of boreholes, because we are just unable to use potable water anymore for irrigation purposes. So a number of our sport facilities, we have drilled boreholes. If I can come, we are going towards the summer season as I'm speaking, and we have about 20 municipal pools, just as an example. But we can't open municipal pools using potable water. So that's also in our plan, and already we have drilled boreholes at about 4 municipal pools, and we are prioritizing, of course, those municipal pools to open during the coming pool season. So also with regard to electricity and trying to reduce the carbon footprint in many of our facilities, we're looking at LED innovations, looking at alternative electricity supply. Some of the service providers have approached us, and they want to bring in massive solar paneling in some of our facilities. So at the moment, we are exploring partnerships with entities that can actually deliver those kind of services and bring in a much more greener approach to us delivering sport and recreation infrastructure in particular. We have also recently seen that when it comes to water usage, and we need to install timers. When it comes to electricity, we need to make sure that the lights only go on when there is actually activity. And we've seen that we have been able to develop or make use of the smart water applications, where you don't have to water all the time. You can actually limit the timing. You can remote control it and all of that. We have partnered with a particular school in PE, if I can put it like that. That school is very much advanced in how they have developed its Pearson High School. So we've struck a partnership with them to assist our employees at the municipal facilities to empower them, train them, and especially around the smart applications for water and irrigation use. So yeah, I think municipality has also applied to National Treasury for funding to do specific investigations to cut the carbon footprint in all our infrastructure development projects.
Really sounds futuristic, but I think also sounds very exciting. I know we've got limited time left, but just everybody that went through and registered, you would have had this. You can simply just scan right there, and you'll get all the facilities. You'll get a greater in-depth understanding with regards to the QR code that's there. Explore the Nelson Mandela Bay Municipality, via your app, and also just via your smartphone as well. Just a final video before we close, and again, it will probably speak closer to your eventing side of things. So, I mean, we talked about Ironman, we talked about so many different things. So let's have a quick watch, and that we'll react to it, and then we'll get our final comments.
Across crystalline waters that brought the first Ironman to life on the big island of Hawaii, whispers of a new breed of warrior were carried to the distant shores of Africa. The home of the struggle and the fight, where ancient kings still roam free, and the spirit of the wild cannot be tamed. It is here, amidst thunderous applause, that an epic adventure awaits, calling the fearless, the brave, and only the fiercest of mind and spirit to the ultimate hunt for victory. One of only 5 host locations in the exclusive Ironman Championship Series, Nelson Mandela Bay, South Africa, welcomes the world to the Ironman African Championship. A course unlike any other, featuring sweeping ocean views of untouched African coastline. Rich indigenous nature reserves, and the rhythm of a people whose hearts beat with passion. The Ironman African Championship summons the wild at heart to the journey, the adventure, and the race of a lifetime. Welcome to Ironman Africa. Anything is possible.
Yes, I think once again, ladies and gentlemen, just on the back of a World Football Summit like this, what football brings in terms of hope, what it sparks, what a World Cup does, what it sparks in terms of opportunities, and I think they've done a fantastic, fantastic job. Maybe, Sue, very briefly, our time is up. Future plans in terms of utilization, going back to what I call your home?
Indeed. We're looking forward to September to be back there for the senior women's tournament, and bigger and better, and more legacy programs to be rolled out, and as you say, making it again home away from home.
Absolutely, and great work. May that continue, and hopefully one of these days we'll crown Banyana Banyana as world champions, and we'll do a ticker tape parade around Rebecca as well. So hopefully those plans do stick. Zikona, from your side, maybe just a final word, anything we've maybe left out that you would want to share with the world out there?
Okay. From our side, one thing that I want to stress is the fact that we are here. The Nelson Mandela Bay Stadium can deliver, and we're at the point where we make magic. One thing that we always say, we're all about customer experience. We're trying every day to come up with new ideas to ensure that our customers, when they get to the stadium, they're very happy and satisfied. So we'll do anything to ensure that the Sues, when they get to the stadium, they're happy. We provide the best facility, and we can still, we can, I'm sure I have a right to brag and say the Nelson Mandela Bay Stadium is one of the top 5 stadiums in Africa, and that is a fact.
We can't argue with facts. That's it. We can only argue with time because it's against us. 30 seconds on your side, Charmaine. I know that you all have to live and espouse by Madiba as his values, and I think everything that has been spoken here speaks true to that. Your final comments.
Well, we do subscribe to the values of Madiba in terms of humility, in terms of integrity, and that is why every partnership that we create with an event organizer, we try to maintain that integrity in the process, and we definitely make sure that we bring to the party the city basket of services. We ensure that there's compliance, event compliance. We assist event organizers with event compliance, and therefore we are open for business. We are open for partnerships with event organizers, and we are ready to host sporting events, arts and culture, recreation events of any magnitude, big or small. So we will be waiting at Nelson Mandela Bay for those approaches.
Incredible, ladies and gentlemen. A big thanks to yourself, Sue. A big thanks, Zikona. Thanks, Charmaine, for coming through at the World Football Summit. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big round of applause for Nelson Mandela Bay.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, ladies. Please make your way off the stage to our left. Really appreciate your contributions. And yeah, I mean, we feel very welcome here. I think the fact that we've decided to stage our first event on this continent here in Durban, in the Nelson Mandela Bay Municipality. We saw those amazing videos there. In fact, the event before day one of this inaugural WFS Africa at the Mozambique Stadium, I mean, absolutely fantastic. And, I still remember that stadium vividly from the World Cup. There was a lot of focus on Soccer City. There was a lot of focus on Cape Town, but this other one really stood out to me. And I do remember it vividly from 12 years ago. Fantastic. Well, we've reached the end of the morning session, if you like.